Hello, my name is Jake Butkovich, and today I will be presenting a case study of hypoxia in the Long Island Sound. In Silent Spring, Rachel Carson describes a town with no more wildlife due to the use of synthetic pesticides. And this Silent Spring was not something that Miss Carson made up. It wasn't a figment of her imagination. It was real. Pesticides damaged a lot of our environments. DDT, we all know the effect that it had on birds of prey in particular, and our bald eagles. Um, and something similar is happening in Long Island right now. In this case, it's a silent summer instead of a silent spring. Um, because during the summer, hypoxia causes the bottoms of our local waters, especially in the Long Island Sound in the west, um, to lose their life. Hypoxia is when there is too little oxygen in the water for organisms to survive. We need oxygen to breathe. Fish and other marine organisms also need oxygen to survive. In the summer, there's stratification of layers. So there's hot water on top, cold water on the bottom. We know hot water is less dense than the cold water, so it stays on top. And the water from the top of the air trapped in the water at the top is not brought down to the bottom and distributed. This seems like a natural cause, but our current hypoxia problem is not caused by nature alone. It's caused by nutrient pollution, mostly of nitrogen, but also some phosphorus. Now, this occurs because these pollutants, which are, we think of them as fertilizers for our lawns and stuff like that, and that's what they do in the ocean and the sound. They fertilize the phytoplankton, which bloom. There's more of them. They fall to the bottom of the water, and they're decomposed by organisms like bacteria. These bacteria use oxygen to decompose the bodies or the dead organisms. And since there's no mixing of waters, this whole area is just depleted of oxygen because it was used up in decomposing these phytoplankton. And like air pollution, these pollutants don't observe our arbitrary political boundaries. The Long Island Sound is not its own separate entity. It is. It requires a collaboration of the states on the Long Island Sound, New York, Connecticut, the states in the Long Island Sound watershed, which reaches all the way north up to Quebec, as well as Rhode Island, to figure out this issue. So, why does this issue matter? And what are the costs of inaction? The costs of inaction are pretty obvious for this issue. Fish need oxygen to survive, and if there's no oxygen for them, the fish die. And fish is an oversimplification. We also lose shellfish, marine plants, and things like that all live on the bottom of these waters. And there's adverse effects of fish above the technical threshold that we have for hypoxia. So even levels of oxygen in the water that are higher than our levels that we're measuring for hypoxia can still damage ecosystems. Um, New York's economy, there's still very many fishermen that rely on our bays for either shellfish or crustaceans or actual fish, and it's of great recreational importance for recreational fishermen, which drives a big part of the Long Island economy. But most importantly, to me at least, this is an issue that affects our environment, and I think that the sanctity, the health of the Long Island Sound should be protected and not infringed on by our release of pollutants. So in these, when there's a lot of hypoxia, this creates dead zones, and dead zones are very self-explanatory. All the marine life die off. So what can the government do to address this issue? The things the government can do, there's only really one thing the government can do, and that is to reduce the amount of nitrogen released into the water, or provide regulations to ensure that less nitrogen is released into the water. The government can't stop the stratification of these waters in the summertime, unless they're going to take action on fossil fuels, which is a different issue. The more important thing they can do is reduce the amount of nitrogen released to the water. Nitrogen comes from our wastewater, our fertilizer, and our stormwater runoff. We all excrete nitrogen when we use the bathroom, and that goes somewhere. And for a lot of Long Islanders, that is not to a wastewater treatment plant, that is not to a sewer, that is to a cesspool underneath every house, which is very dangerous. there's a lot of policy tools that can and already have been used to address this issue. The biggest piece of legislation that was enacted in order to address this issue was the Long Island Sound Total Max Daily Load, or the LISTMDL. And what this does, as the name suggests, is it sets a maximum amount of nitrogen that can be released into the Long Island Sound every day. So this was enacted in 2001. It was a collaboration between the governments of New York State and the state of Connecticut, and it was approved by the EPA. So it requires a nearly 60% decrease from pre-planned levels. So a 60% decrease in nitrogen into the Long Island Sound from the 90s, before when this plan was enacted. And the states took a lot of actions like refitting wastewater treatment plants and things like that to enact this plan. And actually, we have seen the amount of hypoxia, the total area covered by hypoxia, decrease substantially since this plan was enacted, on a steady decline. And it's still going down. But as we'll see, there's a lot more that's being done as well. In 2015, the DEC promoted a Long Island Nitrogen Action Plan. This is not just the DEC, it was a collaboration between DEC, local governments like the county, and obviously the state government with the DEC, and some private or charities and institutions that protect the Long Island Sound. And they are pushing new legislation to further decrease our nitrogen levels with septic incentive plans, improvement for wastewater plants and sewers. And this is great because our nitrogen levels are continuing to decrease. And we know that when nitrogen falls, hypoxia falls with it. And there's even more that's looking to be done to reduce nitrogen levels. And that is, a new study was conducted in 2020 to explore a trading plan similar to the plans that have been proposed to be used for trading carbon credits. Each source of nitrogen is given credits. So, each house that has a cesspool and each wastewater treatment plant has a certain number of credits. And if you reduce your nitrogen, you can sell your credits for money to someone else who needs to release more nitrogen. So, if, say, somebody cannot retrofit their house with a nitrogen capturing thing for their cesspool, they will buy credits from someone else. And there's only a limited number of credits. So this incentivizes the decrease in emissions of nitrogen into our waters. There are a few bottlenecks to solving this issue, however. As always, there's cost. Reducing nitrogen at a plant or at a house is very costly. And even with incentives, it's a big undertaking to get a new nitrogen capture system put on your cesspool at a house, for instance. And this is a huge issue, particularly for Long Island, because just the volume of cesspool usage compared to sewer usage. Long Island was created a long time ago. I mean, it was settled a long time ago by, the houses were built a long time ago. And everything was built with a cesspool for every house, even near the coast in a lot of cases. So it's not as easy as the government saying, we're going to put a nitrogen capture system on our wastewater treatment plant. You have to have every individual house put a nitrogen capture system on their cesspool in order to reduce these emissions. And that is just a much larger undertaking, much more difficult than putting one on a treatment plant. Also, nitrogen is used as a fertilizer for lawns. And if you drive around any of the areas around Stony Brook, you'll see people love their green lawns. And people don't want to stop using these fertilizers and have a ugly brown lawn. And that's a big issue. Just the keeping up with the Joneses, right? So this is a very important issue. And we really need to reduce nitrogen. But there's a lot that we can and are already doing about it to reduce the amount of hypoxia in our waters. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing your comments.